Good morning. Welcome to the worship here at East Main, where we are all so glad that each and every one of you are here. I really appreciate the song that was just led, "We Will Work Till Jesus Comes." That's basically what being a servant of Christ is all about, serving Him, working for His cause, for His glory. It's hard for us to imagine, those of us who live today, because this has been a part of our lives, as far as I'm aware, for the life of everyone that's in this room. But there was a time in our nation's history when the Coast Guard did not exist. And if you were, like in the 1800s, if you were a sailor and your ship struck a rock, that was almost a guarantee that you would die, because there was no system set up for those who were on the land to come in boats and rescue you. All that began to change in the 19th century, and one of the big things that made it change happened in Nantucket, Massachusetts. On March 31st, 1879, there was a very, very violent storm that swept across Nantucket Sound, and there was a ship that was approaching the shore. The ship basically could not see because of all the rain and all the fog, and it wrecked. It wrecked far off from shore by hitting one of those rocks that is just below the surface of the water. This led to one of the largest rescue efforts in the history of Nantucket Sound. There's a captain by the name of Thomas F. Sansbury, and he took a crew of volunteers, not sailors who were being paid to do this. These were people who lived on shore, but they volunteered to do this. He and them, they rowed their boat towards this schooner that had wrecked, and they rescued the crew, and they rowed them back to shore, and then they went back out into the storm because there were reports of others that needed their help, other ships that were in danger, and sailors that were in danger of drowning. And what they ended up doing was, for the next 32 consecutive hours, like a day and a half, nonstop, this man and his crew of volunteers, they went back out into that storm. They moved from wreck to wreck, and they saved more than a dozen lives. Captain Sansbury was given a gold medal. Each of his volunteer crew were given silver medals, and there's a museum that's over there in Massachusetts that is dedicated to the story of these men. They had a motto. The motto was, "You have to go out, but you don't have to come back." Which basically tells me that to rescue the lives of people that they did not even know, they were willing to, over and over and over again, risk their own lives. They weren't paid to do this. They were volunteers. Jesus was like that. The Apostle Paul was like that, willing to do whatever it would take to save you and me, to save others. And that's basically what being a servant is all about. We sing a song, "Make me a servant, Lord, make me like you. For you are a servant, make me one too." But do we really understand what it means to be a servant just like Jesus? We're familiar with what he did in John 13 when he washed the disciples' feet. And Peter didn't want him to wash Peter's feet because Peter was like, you are the Son of God. You're not going to demean yourself and lower yourself to this filthy, disgusting job of washing not just dust and mud, but grime and other unspeakable things off of my feet. You're not going to do that, but Jesus talked him into it. And then you remember the point of him doing that. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet, for I have given you an example that you should do just as I have done to you. And what that basically means is he's telling us, serve others. And serve others in a way that would be a big inconvenience to you. Serve others by doing something that you would not normally do. Serve others by doing something that you maybe don't even really want to do. Something that you would even on your own accord, your first impulse would be kind of, why would I even want to do that? That's terrible. I don't want to experience that. But if it would help bring someone closer to God, if it would help save a soul, then Jesus is saying this is what you should do. Because that's what I'm doing for you. I'm dying on a cross in terrible, agonizing pain for you, to serve you, to save you. And if I'm willing to do that, then you should be willing to do the same for others in how you serve them. You see, being a servant in the same way that Jesus was a servant, it's more than just I'll pick people up and bring them to church. Or do you need your yard mowed? I'll be happy to do that. I'm not demeaning or putting or lessening the importance of things like that at all. I'm not. But you see, the thing that we need to realize about being a servant in the same way that Jesus was a servant is Jesus served others for a specific purpose. The reason he served others was to help them get to heaven. It wasn't just about serving others, it was why we serve others. And I think that if we are going to have the goal of being a servant just like Jesus was a servant, then we need to not only serve others by helping them, and even helping them in ways that we really would not want to help them, but we must also have the right motive, the right goal. I want to help this person go to heaven. That's why I'm serving them. The Apostle Paul had the same mindset. He told us to serve others, and he told us, here's the mindset I want you to have while you're serving others. Philippians 2, verses 3 through 4. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit. I really just care only about myself. It's really what I want. What can you all do for me? What can advance my own interests and my own goals? Or I'm too good to lower myself to bring someone to church or to mow their yard. No, that's for other people, but no, I don't want to waste my time doing that. Paul says, don't have that attitude. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit. Instead, he says, in humility, be humble, count others more significant than yourselves. We will never serve anyone. We will never be a servant if we don't have that mindset. If we don't look at absolutely everyone and say, you are more important than me, we're not going to reach the level of servanthood that Jesus and Paul would want us to reach. let each of you look not only to his own interest, and that's important. Paul's not saying that you just completely ignore your own interests, you don't even care about yourself. No, that's not what he's saying. You remember Galatians 6, verse 1, restore someone who's caught in a transgression, but then he said, each one of you look to yourself to make sure that you're not tempted. He's not saying that you don't have to look to yourself and care about your own desires or what's in your best interest. No, what he is saying is, in addition to looking to your own interest, look also to the interest of others. And you see, that's the key, because what it's so easy for us to do as human beings, it's natural for us to do this. We think about what's good for us, what we want. And what God is saying is, you need to do more than that. You need to be looking out for the interest of others as well. Count them as more significant than yourself. Now, how do we do this? And again, how do we do this in the way that Jesus did? Because the reason Jesus was a servant was because he wanted to help others get to heaven. I'm going to give you some practical, real-life scenarios out of 1 Corinthians. Open up your Bibles to 1 Corinthians chapter 8. We're going to read just the very last verse of 1 Corinthians 8, verse 13, but if you skim, it's a short chapter, it's only 13 verses. If you just skim through the chapter while I'm talking, you'll get the idea here. The church at Corinth, well, they were in a city, Corinth, and it was a very pagan city. There were temples to pagan gods all over the place. And one of the things that this pagan idolatry required in their worship of these false gods was sacrifices. And so the businesses in Corinth, they didn't have Walmart or Kroger for their grocery stores. No, there were butchers that basically were right there in the open market, and if you wanted to buy your food, you went right there and a butcher sold you meat. Well, these businesses, they said, you know what, these people going into their temples, they're going to offer all these animal sacrifices to their gods. You know, we can make some money here. We're going to set up right outside the temple. Maybe we might even set up inside the temple, and we'll sell them the animals, which they'll then use to sacrifice. Well, what also apparently ended up happening was people who weren't interested in offering animal sacrifices to these false gods, but people who really just wanted to buy an animal to slaughter and cook for supper tonight for their family. Well, where are they going to get these animals? All the butchers, they're right outside these temples. They might even be inside the temples. So if you're a Christian in Corinth and you're not interested in worshiping false gods, in fact, you were converted out of that. You want to serve the true God, but, well, where are you going to get your meat for supper tonight? Well, the only place to get it is going over to the temple, going to the butcher, and buying some of this meat. But you see, what ended up happening was, and this is another thing that we see in the church today, just as back then, well, brothers and sisters in Christ, they were very judgmental. Some brother in Corinth, they saw another brother or sister go to that particular butcher that's right there at the temple for Aphrodite and buying some meat, and they just assumed the worst. Well, what are they doing at that temple? They must be worshiping Aphrodite, and that meat that they're buying from the butcher, that must be for animal sacrifices to Zeus. How dare they do this? And there was strife in the church of Corinth because the people who were buying the meat, they were like, well, I'm not worshiping Zeus. That's not what this is for. I just want to feed my family for supper tonight. Well, no, you can't do that. You can't do. Well, where else am I going to get food? Well, I don't care about that, but you cannot. It's a sin for you to even buy meat from a butcher, even if you're doing it for good reason. You cannot do that. So what Paul does when he writes Corinth in 1 Corinthians in chapter 8, he addresses the problem. And one of the things that he brings out, he says, food will not commend you to God. You're not going to grow any closer to God or any farther away from God simply by buying meat and eating meat, even no matter where you buy it from. So that he's giving a message to the people who are judging their brethren and saying you're in sin for doing this. The message he's given to them is no, they're not. If they're not actually involved in idolatry and they're just wanting to buy food for their families, there's nothing wrong with that. That's one message that he gives. However, he doesn't stop there, and this brings me to verse 13 on the screen. He says, therefore, if food makes my brother stumble, I will never eat meat lest I make my brother stumble. See, now he's talking to the people who are buying the meat. He's like, look, you are putting a stumbling block in the path of your brethren here. Now, they should not be judging you because they're saying that you're involved in pagan idolatry. And I know you're not involved in pagan idolatry. But you see, that they're convinced that you are, and so you are putting a stumbling block in their path. You are causing them to judge you. You are also, maybe some of them are struggling with getting out of pagan idolatry, and if they see you going to that temple, maybe that might be what pushes them over the edge and says, well, if brother so-and-so can do this, then I guess I can go back into idolatry. So he's saying to the people who have that freedom, who have the right to just buy food for their families, he's like, look, until your brothers who are offended by this, until they can come to realize that you're not actually doing anything wrong, you are a stumbling block to them. So in their interest, their best interest eternally, for their soul's sake, go ahead and go without this. Eat just vegetables, or just, if you have to go somewhere else to buy the meat, then go ahead and do that. Because here's the thing, if it's meat, if it's food that's a stumbling block to my brother, then I'm not going to eat meat anymore. Because I'm not going to be a stumbling block to my brother. Why? Because I don't want my brother to go to hell. I don't want to be an influence on my brother to avoid eternity in heaven. That's being a servant. Now look, I chose that picture for a reason. Just looking at that picture, I get hungry. That's what Paul's willing to go without. And that's a tall order, isn't it? But that's what he was willing to do, if that's what it would take. What did you say in Philippians, Paul? Count others as more significant, more important than you. Don't look just only to your own interests, look also to the interest of others. Now go to the next chapter, chapter 9. It's in this same context. He's addressing this same controversy here. Notice we're going to read starting with verse 19. Chapter 9, verse 19. He says, for though I am free from all, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win more of them. To the Jews I became as a Jew in order to win Jews. To those under the law, that would be the law of Moses, I became as one under the law, though not myself being under the law, that I might win those under the law. To those outside the law, the Gentiles, I became as one outside the law. And then he clarifies, though not being outside the law of God, but under the law of Christ, that I might win those outside the law. To the weak, I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some. I do it all for the sake of the gospel, that I might share with them in its blessings. Now, we've heard this before. You've heard in sermons this verse being quoted before, I have become all things to all people. But how often do you and I actually do that? How often are you and I actually willing to do that? Because really, what our first inclination is I don't care if they're upset. I don't care if it offends them. I don't care if it's a stumbling block. I want to do what I want to do, and they're just going to have to get over it. But I want you to notice, why did Paul say this? I'll bring your attention back to verse 19. I have made myself a servant to all. Why did he do it? Verse 19 says, that I might win more of them. I am willing to serve others by giving up freedoms that I have. And the reason I'm doing it is because I want to save their souls. I want to convert them to Christ. I want them to go to heaven. I have become all things to all people, verse 22, and here's why, that by all means I might save some. It's not about me, it's about them. And if me changing in this way can help them get to heaven, then that's what I'm going to do. Verse 23, I do it all for the sake of the gospel. If I am trying to convert a Jew, then I'm going to act like I'm still under the law of Moses, even though I'm not. I'll observe those rituals if that will open up their mind to having a Bible study so that I can convert them to Christ. And if I'm trying to convert a Gentile, then I'm not going to be telling the Gentile that they need to be circumcised or that they need to observe Passover. I'm going to act as someone that is outside the law of Moses. I'll still be under the law of God. He says, I'm not going to actually sin against God, but I will do anything else that I can to open up their minds to the message about Jesus that I have that can save their souls. Here's why I'm doing it. I'm doing it all for the sake of the gospel. Do you and I, do we think like that? No, we don't. We really don't. What I'm about to say, you might think. What I'm about to do, is it going to help the person that sees me doing this or hears me? Is it going to bring them closer to Jesus or push them further away from Jesus? That's what we should be thinking about. What can I do? How can I act? What can I say or refrain from saying, refrain from doing, even though I might have the perfect right to do it, even though I might have the liberty to say it? But will it help another soul get to heaven? Because if it won't, then I'll go without it. That's what being a servant in the mindset of Jesus is like. Go to chapter 10. Again, in the same context here, notice what he says as he closes it out in verses 31 through 33 and then verse 1 of chapter 11. So whether you eat or drink, and whether you buy this meat from the butcher that's right outside the temple or not, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, notice what did he say? Do all to the glory of God. Is this going to give God glory? Is this going to help others glorify God? Because if it's not, even if I might have the freedom to do it, if it's going to be a stumbling block to others, then I'm willing to give that up. Notice this, what he says next. Give no offense to Jews or to Greeks or to the church of God. And again, brethren, this isn't our mindset. We are Americans. We have our freedoms, and we love our freedoms. And what that's caused is for us to have this mindset, well, does that offend them? Well, that's their problem. I don't care if it offends them, because it's all about me. It's all about what I want. And if I can read in my Bible that there is not a thou shalt not for this, if I have the freedom to do this, then I am going to do it. And if it bothers someone, well, then I don't care about them at all. Give no offense to Jews or Greeks or the church of God. Put the others before yourself. Count others as more significant than yourself. And why did he do it? He said, just as I try to please everyone in everything I do, and that's a tall order, And you might be thinking, well, you can't please everyone, and you can't, but he didn't say, I am pleasing everyone. He says, I'm trying. I'm trying. Can any of us live a sinless life? Can you? Can I? No. But what does God want us to do? Does he want us to try? And when we mess up, does he want us to repent? It's that same principle. We can't please everyone in everything we do, but Paul says you need to try anyway. And here's why. I'm not seeking my own advantage. This is not about me. It's not about what I want. I'm seeking the advantage of others. He says, not seeking my own advantage, but that of many. And here's why. This is the only thing I care about, Paul says, that they may be saved. Will this help them get closer to heaven? Because if it will help them get closer to heaven, then I'm all in. Does it mean that I have to sacrifice some things? Then I'm willing to sacrifice them. Because what matters is that they go to heaven. It's not about me. It's about them. And that's the mindset that Jesus had. Because he didn't want to go to that cross. Father, if at all possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done. I do not want to undergo the pain and the agony of this terrible death. But it's the only way to save other people's souls, so that's what I'm going to do. There's a reason after saying all of this, he closes it out with the first verse of the next chapter by saying, be imitators of me as I am of Christ. Make me a servant. Lord, make me like you, for you are a servant. Lord, make me one too. That's what this is about. Is it about mowing people's yards who can't do it on their own? Yes. Is it about picking people up and bringing them to church? Yes. But it's more than just that, brethren. Being a servant is about sacrificing what you would want, sacrificing what you even have the freedom to do, all for the spiritual interests of others. I have one more verse to share with you. Galatians chapter 5, verse 13. He says, for you were called to freedom, brothers. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. Now, in the context, what he's talking about, he's telling them, you are free from having to observe the law of Moses. That's the freedom he's talking about there. But I want to apply that to us today. Again, those Christians here in the United States of America, we are free and we love our freedom. We don't like to give anything up. Sacrifice, that's a tall order for us, especially when it comes to our freedoms. I have the God-given right to do this. I have the right to say whatever I want to say, to do whatever I want to do. So notice what he says here. Do not use your freedom for an opportunity for the flesh. Instead, serve one another through love, agape. And what does agape mean? You put others before yourself. That's what being a Christian servant is all about. So yes, the next time the announcements are made and it says we need volunteers to serve in this area, this ministry, yes, brethren, do that. Because that's serving, yes. But you see, what Jesus wants us to do is take it to the next level. What Jesus wants us to do is, as we're living our lives, and interacting with each other. And when I say each other, I'm not just talking about our fellow Christians. I'm talking also about those who are not Christians who need that salvation. We need to train ourselves to get into the mindset of, how can I help them get to heaven? If I have the perfect right to do this, if I do this, it's not sin at all. But if it would put a stumbling block in their path, if it would give someone else the wrong impression, am I willing to give it up? Because if I'm not, am I really a servant? Like Jesus? Is it really none of self and all of thee? Is it really all to Jesus I surrender? Or am I singing those songs? Am I mouthing those scriptural platitudes? But in the end, it's really just about me. And it's about what I want. You see, if we're really going to be like Jesus, if we're really going to be like Paul, then it has to be others before me. What will help them get to heaven? And I ask that for all of us. What will help you get to heaven? Is there sin in your life that you need to repent of? Repenting of it will help you get to heaven, Christian. Are you here today and you are not a Christian? Do you want to go to heaven? Do you believe in Jesus? Are you willing to turn away from the sin in your life? Are you willing to be baptized into Christ? Because that will help you get to heaven. And as you come up out of the water of baptism as a Christian, if you strive to put others before yourself, you will be on that road to heaven. We are here to help each other towards that end. If we can help you in any way, please come while we stand and sing.